Hey, Bernadette McClelland here, and welcome to this week's Friday wrap-up. The topic on Monday, the post on Monday, was all around feedback. And I'm a big believer in feedback being something that is very, very positive. And in most cases, the intention of feedback is positive. If it's coming from a negative space, walk away, just disengage. It's just somebody having a shot. So we're not talking about that. We're actually talking about when you are given feedback on your results or when you're given feedback on your behavior. And so the example that I gave, which pops up from time to time because it was such a game-changing moment for me personally, was I was one of 20 people who were fortunate enough to be invited to join Tony Robbins as his coaching team. 20 people from around the world. We got together in Long Beach, California, and for a week we were taught the philosophies or the tools that Tony Robbins uses. So the setup of the classroom was just like your typical U-shaped classroom, 10 people down each side of the room and the directors down the back. And so we never knew at which point we would be tapped on the shoulder to go up and take over the previous coach's role play, basically. So there were two people at the front of the room. One was the person coaching and the other person was being the one coached. Now, I, for a split second, stopped concentrating, looked at a friend across the room, and we kind of exchanged some eye contact. And at that point, I was tapped on the shoulder. So I went up the front of the room, had no idea. I completely missed the segue. And I started to coach flying by the seat of my pants, not going with any structure, kind of like, when you're told a joke and you laugh and somebody else says, "What did they say?" And you say, "I kind of didn't hear them." That was that kind of scenario. And when that little coaching spot finished, we stood up and both of us at the front of the room stood up, and then we were given feedback. Well, from the back of the room, the feedback was brutal. It was brutal. The worst example of coaching we have ever seen. How embarrassing. It was really brutal. And so I stood there, and I have always had this philosophy that if you're going to stuff up with certainty. And so I stood there, shoulders back, red-heeled shoes, pointed forward, and I just said, "Thank you." And I sat down. Now, over the course of the next few days, everybody else was getting pulled out of the room one by one, except me. And I thought, that's it. I have completely stuffed this up. I'm going home. I've missed the spot. Unbeknownst to me, they were all getting called out of the room separately so that they could be given individual feedback. The point of this was I didn't need to be called out of the room because I had already demonstrated the perfect way to receive feedback, and that is to say thank you and have no attachment to it. And so I was one of 16 because 4 people didn't make the cut because they didn't take feedback. And so in business today, we need to realize that feedback is such a pivotal part of us growing, of us innovating, of us becoming the leader that we need to become. And so when feedback is given with the right intention and you receive it in the right way, then you are receiving that from a position, I guess, of, I don't know what the word is, strength. And so if you are somebody who doesn't take feedback well, you get very, very defensive, that's fear. So I see that as somebody who is really struggling with themselves. And so my suggestion, I have a couple of suggestions. One is for leaders, is that or for anybody really, is when you give somebody feedback, ask permission first. It's simple. Do you mind if I give you some feedback? And get that buy-in from that person first and foremost. Secondly, if you are the person receiving that feedback, what's critical is to remember that there is no right or wrong, okay? It's just somebody else's perspective, number one. But number two, feedback is simply feedback on what you have done or what you have said. It is not a personal attack on you as a person. So if you can be open to feedback, that makes you extremely coachable. And so today, businesses want their people, especially in the sales environment, to be coachable. So look, on that note, you think about prototypes, you think about pilot programs, you think about beta programs. The world is littered with examples of people putting stuff out there for feedback. And so coming up in a few short weeks, I'm going to be running a webinar called Sell Like a Coach, because I seriously believe all this stuff is so important for salespeople. And guess what? It's going to be a beta program. Am I going to be a bit nervous? Absolutely. But I'm looking for feedback on how I can improve it as well. So on that note, have an amazing weekend. Feedback, for those of you that might want to know, I'm hanging out for my hairdresser's appointment on Monday because I am sick of getting myself feedback. And I'm really looking forward to getting out and about. So on that note, have an amazing weekend, have fun, and we'll speak to you this time next week. Bye for now.